Hello, my name is Jan and welcome to part 2 of making a fantasy world map with Inkarnate. Inkarnate is a piece of browser software that you can use to create amazing maps. There's a pro version and a free version, and currently I'm using version 1.0 early access. If you're a pro subscriber, you can get early access. You can find information about that on your Reddit, or maybe you're watching this video and the official version is already out. Let's go to the desktop. So first of all, if you want to support me, it really helps if you like and subscribe to the video if you liked it, and you can also check out my Patreon. I'm mostly known for making tokens for digital virtual tabletops. You can basically compare these two digital versions of miniatures that you might use for your role-playing fantasy games. Alright, let's head into Inkarnate. So last time I showed you how to create cool landmasses, and this time we're going to add some texture to the landmass. First I want to divide it into 6 zones. So I will make a straight line here. This is going to be the equator, and then a line here and a line here and a line here and a line here. So the Earth has different climate zones, as you might know. And because this fantasy world is kind of like, as I told you before, it's kind of like I want to have a fantasy map that is for pirate adventure. There has to be sort of like a Caribbean style area and an old world, and I'm gonna try to resemble some real world physics and what do you call it, like weather patterns and geography to add some believability to my map. You can of course choose to create something completely different that's more fantasy, but for this world I want to kind of have a world that resembles Earth-like climate zones. So first of all, equator is closest to the sun and has the most direct sunlight, so this is going to be a warm area. And it's also going to be a wet area, like tropical, basically. Then just above and below the equator, you're going to have an area that is warm and dry, so more like deserts. One here and one here. And then here we have the cold and wet area. So kind of like Northern Europe, Canada, and then at the absolute tops we have the cold and dry areas. So the equator is warm because it has the most direct sunlight. The poles are so the equator is warm and wet because it has the most direct sunlight, and the poles are cold and dry because they have the least direct sunlight, because they are angled away from the sun. They are going to be the more cold areas. There's something called the Coriolis effect that kind of influences weather patterns. It's kind of confusing, but if you want to learn more about it, you can Google Coriolis effect. But what it basically causes is a couple of cells around the Earth. Because the Earth is spinning, the wind drags across the Earth's surface, and because they're not stuck to the Earth's surface, they're going to be influenced by the rotation. Sometimes they're going to be dragged behind, especially around the equator area where the clouds move the slowest, theoretically, compared to the spinning of the Earth. And at the top, because the Earth spins very fast there compared to the middle of the Earth, they're gonna speed up. So you get kind of these spiraling patterns that you also see in hurricanes and things like that. I think I made some mistakes with explaining it. The explanation is not the most important part. If you want to learn more about it, I suggest you Google it a little bit. But what is important is that we get these kind of spiraling effects that kind of show are major wind patterns. So this one goes like this, and this one goes like this, and then this one goes like this again, and then the other ones go the other way around. So like this, and like this, and like like this. So this kind of shows our major wind areas, and this will be important when we are choosing where the wet side of our mountains will be, where our rivers will be, and things like that. I do suggest you learn more about it. I'm still learning every day about how all this stuff works, and I think it's very, very interesting. But the more details like that you can add into your map, the more immersive it will feel to you, and it will also show through whoever is using the map or looking at the map. Next thing is I'm gonna add some colors to the map. Hey, this version of the map doesn't have the mountains. Okay. Well, that's okay. We can look at the other map. I can put it on the other screen, because before we quit last time, we also added some mountains, but that's okay. Let me just open one window here, and then I can spy on the other one where that was, where I selected the mountain ranges. Did I accidentally delete the mountain ranges? Possibly. But I'm opening it in another window. So we had some mountains here. This is just placeholder. Some mountains here. Some loose mountains here and here. This is just for me to know where I want my final mountains to be. Here, 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 here. Yeah. All right. That's it. So this one can close. Save. And then the next thing I want to talk about is when you're going to choose your textures and values for your map. So I opened a new Inkarnate window. What I did is I imported a black JPEG, which I can use as a brush. So instead of using colors, I can also use black. And I started making a palette, a color palette that I like. And one of the things that you can keep in mind is, like, the best maps is where you can see a beautiful blend between the different climate areas. So if you use a very, very bright color, like for example this one, light white, and then you take another color for your, let's say, grass or temperate areas. Let's say, for this example, I need it to be a bit dark. So we're gonna choose, for example, land 14. You can see that it is there's quite a lot of difference between this value and this value, between the white value and the dark value. And then when you start brushing in the land, the blending in the land, the value shift will be quite contrasty, and that can make it more difficult to create a nice blend. So what you do to blend is you use your brush at the lower opacity, and you start trying to blend these lands. But if you use something that's closer to it, for example, land white 1, and you try to blend it in, it will be a little less contrasty, and the blend will be a little bit smoother when you try to blend it in. So what you can do is, before you decide to color in your map, you can kind of make a palette and see if the colors work together, and if the values are okay. For my map, I chose land white 1, which is this one. It's more of the darkest of the snowy areas. I chose grass. No, sorry. I chose grass 4, I think. Let's see, where's grass 4? I can type it in. Grass 4 as my temperate area. I chose land 2. Sorry, I chose parchment 5 for my desert areas. And then I chose land 2 for my tropical areas. Where's land 2? There we are. So this is going to be my color palette, but you can also make a color palette yourself. You don't have to use mine. You just select some of the colors, and maybe you want maybe you're making a different type of world map where it's more of a dry, deserty world. Maybe you want a color like this, and then you're gonna see, does this colors match? I think they do. Make sure you write down the color that you use, because Inkarnate has a little bit difficult to, you can't use eyedropper or anything like you can do in Photoshop. So these, for example, these 3 colors work quite well together, where if I would take another color, like for example something that's more like this, you would see, oh, that's a bit harsh on the eye, the contrast is too high, the colors is very different. So I probably would not include that in the color palette unless I have some way to blend it easier. For example, maybe a bit more of this, and maybe a bit of this, and then very bright. Then the blend might work better. So make your color palette and play with it for a while. And one thing that I also did was try to figure out which assets work well with the color palette that I chose. So I chose, for example, some mountains. I chose, let's go with this one. I chose, sorry, I need this one. Fancy World. I chose snow mountains for my cold zones. I chose a combination of this one, snow mountains, and then I chose mountains, the one that's called mountains, for this area, and I chose brown mountains. Let's see, where's brown mountains? This one for my desert area. So you can kind of like see which assets work well with which paint type, which, if you know what I mean. Maybe even a bit too dark for this, but this might work better, but that's okay. And then some jungle trees, swamp trees for this area. So in this way you can kind of make a palette out of the things that you'd like to use in your final map. So that's how I work. All right, let's take a look. So I chose land white for the tips, the cold areas, land white 1. So I'm gonna make it a bit bigger, softness, and then this is just a rough coloring. You know what, I'm gonna dip it everywhere just to get started. So this is my first. Then we're going for the cold and wet areas, the temperate areas, and I chose grass 4 for that. Make it a bit smaller. same here. Then I chose parchment 5 for the dry areas. There we go. I see we can increase the cold wet areas a little bit, like this. And then I chose land 2 for the equator area, the tropical area, like this. So this will be our base color palette for this world. And I might change the ocean color later on. And now we're gonna take a look at some things. We're gonna, because if you're around water, there's gonna be more vegetation, yeah? So just around the coast, we're gonna add some more vegetation here. Like this, and like this. We're gonna grab the other one, go around like this, and like this. And the same for the snowy areas. Just a little bit like this. Let's save. Alright, let's do the same here. And do the same with the temperate areas. As such. Alright, that's already a bit better. Next thing that's going to be really important is on our big mountain ranges, we have a wet side of the mountain and a dry side of the mountain. So how we can see that is like in these weather cells, the wind is coming from certain directions. So for example, in this weather cell over here, the wind is coming from this direction and it's going to hit the mountainside. So when it hits the mountainside, there's going to be more vegetation because that's where the water will collect and where also the rivers will start. And in this area, the wind will hit the mountains around here. So let's clear that up a little bit. And then here the wind will hit the mountain on this side. And here the wind will hit the mountain on this side. Let's check this one. So here the wind will hit the mountain here. And here as such. So this will be a bit more of the dry area. And here as well, it will expand a little bit. Oh, I really like the undo button in the new Inkarnate. In the previous Inkarnate, you couldn't undo. Right, let's save for a moment. Alright, this is a good base for the map. What you can also think of is the cold areas won't have like a smooth line that will create the cold area. It will have probably a little bit more cold air from the north, will make it a little bit colder. So it's not just a smooth straight line that creates the cold area. You can go inwards a little bit, and maybe in some of the inlands the cold will come down a little bit more. And let's check down here as well, and down here, and this is starting to take shape. Maybe because the warm air is coming from here, this area won't be as cold. The top ones will. Let's see. These will be not so dry. These ones will be cold. Let's check the bottom. So cold air comes from this direction. Let's see. I think this works. All right. So what we will do now is we'll get rid of the texts. There we go. And then we'll start to think about where the rivers will start going. And one thing that I want to figure out first is, how do I want to do my rivers? Because I think if I just chop away land with these tools, it won't look as nice. So let's see, if I take just things like this, for example, and I say here's gonna be a river, I don't think this just brown line will look so nice. So I have to think about that for a moment. I haven't thought about that before. Maybe I can use a path tool, or maybe just a brush with a watercolor. Oh, I need this to be like this. I think I like that better than just a brown line. The downside of this is that if I start tweaking my colors, my brushes, it will also overlap the rivers. Maybe first thing, before I select that, I will use a path tool to do that. And I will try to find a color that's similar to our watercolor. It's a little bit too bright. And a little bit too blue. Could be a little bit more green. Like that. I use that to say where my rivers will be. Alright, so first river is, let's see, where will be a lot of water will be collected. So I think because the wind will hit over here, there will be some small rivers here, but I want to find my big river first, my Mississippi, my Amazon, basically. Here we can have a big one. So basically the river starts collecting. And one thing to keep in mind, guys, is rivers don't usually split up towards the coast. They collect at different areas near higher elevations, and then they merge and become a bigger river. So we'll have some here. Sometimes it might look like they split up, but then it's usually a delta. And there will also be many more smaller rivers. But these smaller rivers, they're not visible on the map. Just like on the real life map, like you don't see smaller rivers when you zoom out to world scale of a map. You don't see them on a map. You see them when you zoom in. You might see a different color in vegetation around the river. That's possible. Right, let's see. Where will our next big river be? This will be actually a bit more dry. No. Let's start working with lower opacities so we can have a little bit more of a blend. Sorry for the clicking sounds, you're gonna hear some more of it because I'm using a mouse for this. So I would like to have a river in this area as well, but we need some places where the river would collect. Let's think. So maybe this is some marshland. Let's see. Let's say some water will collect around this mountain. And I'm gonna place one more mountain here, just because I can. I will clean it up later. So these will be two places where water will collect into a river. This will work, and the same here. All right. And because there's a river, there will be more vegetation. As such. So that's two big rivers. Let's find some more big rivers. So this is not a big river, this was just a test. All right, let's see, in this northern area. So the wind comes from here, get us on this side of the mountain, and might create a river just around here. Let's do it. And I'm not sure if these rivers will be final product or if they will just be placeholders. I think they will temporarily be placeholders. So, all right. So that's one river there. And let's think about a river here. Let's see, this would work. Just some smaller rivers. They need some space as well. Like this. Maybe one up here. So this is actually the dry side of the hill. So let me paint it in a little bit more clear. So placing a mountain there justifies me to have a river. Oh. Cool. All right, that looks good. Next thing is I'm gonna save, and then I will do some other stuff. I just think I will make a start of adding some stamps here and there, and then continue with that later in another episode. So let's get rid of this one, this one. Let's get rid of these. There we go. All right, stamp time. First I'm gonna save, and then I'm gonna place some stamps. So for my mountains, I selected snow mountains. And when I created my palettes, I just selected snow mountains for this one. And then we're gonna think about scale as well. What kind of scale would I like to have? I think to keep it kind of not too super realistic and kind of cartoony, and that's what Inkarnate is good about. Create game art like mountains. I might go for scale 60. Let's see. Yes. So it's smart to write down the scale that you use so that you can always get back to it. So we're gonna add some mountains here. And over here. And to create depth in the map, make sure you overlap also the borders of the map. Make sure you overlap. It creates a depth. So this can actually go up a little bit to overlap this a bit more. And let's blend it a little better, these mountains. All right, let's take a look at these. There's also a small version of this. Snow Mountains small, Snow Mountains medium. Let's see. This might be better. And let's see if we can fit it a bit more naturally in here. That's good. And let's blend it a bit more. There we go. Let's take a look here. Just at the bottom. And blend it in. As such. Looks good. It's pretty good. Good start. Next thing that I want to do is I want to add some forest. Some pine trees. Oh, pine. And scale is important. So we're going to go back to that 60%. and also overlap. It's pretty to overlap. So to overlap, this one goes a bit more back, and this one goes in the front. So we've got some pine trees in between the mountains as well. And the same here. So what we do here is we make this one go, let's see, let's make these all go back. This one can go front, this one goes front. So let's see, this need to be, so you can see the Z level here. So I want this one can be Z level 0, this one can be Z level 1. And then if I put my pines on Z level 1, it should go in between like this. That's good. And then I can go back to -2 to go behind here. And that's a way to create some depth in these pine trees. Let's see how that looks. That looks pretty cool. And it's also nice to blend the trees. So let's say we've got we've got a big forest here, and here it's all snowy pines, but then when it hits the other climate zone, it turns into normal pines. You can also mix it with each other a little bit. And I don't like that this is too evenly spread out, so I'm going to remove some. And maybe add some more snowy pines here and there. Alright, that looks cool. I'm going to continue doing that at the other snowy areas as well. So this one will be -1, this one will be 0, and this one will be 1. And then I should be able to place the trees in between. So this one goes -1, should go behind these mountains. And then sometimes I don't like it when the trees look too similar. And one of the problems, this is one thing that's annoying. I need to put this on 60. So let's get rid of this. Right, that's better. So on -1, it goes behind the mountain. And then put one forward, and it can go in between these two mountains. And then go one forward, and it will go in between these two mountains. And it can be nice if they kind of collect here. And then maybe I want to go forward 1 to put some mountains, to put some trees on the mountainside like that. That's cool. Let's check out the bottom. So put this forward, this one backward. These are quite similar, so that's okay. And size 60. Go back. this one. Cool. So we've got our snowy trees near our snowy mountains. That's a good start of the map. I'm going to save and I'm going to leave it here for this episode. Next episode we will continue with stamping our map full of cool icons and vegetation and things like that. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.